Let me start the recorder. Okay, the recorder has started. Welcome everyone, Julie Lindsay here, and it's great to see a few of you in the room, or about half the class actually now in the room, which is great for our meeting to have a sort of touch base around the last assessment. Now, I've got some slides lined up. I sort of thought I'd talk through these slides, and then we really need to open the floor and look. If you want to interrupt me as I go through these slides, that's fine as well, right? It's not a formal presentation or anything. I've just got some thoughts that I wanted to share with you. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. Someone else just joined us. Oh, Lorraine. Hi, Lorraine. How are you?
I'm going well. How are you?
Good, thanks. Good.
Is my mic on?
It is. We can hear you and we can see you. Yep.
Yeah. Good to see everyone.
Good. Now let me just share my screen. Here we go. Okie doke. Just going to make sure I've got chat room open there as well. I think I'll just leave the slides. I don't need to put them into full mode. I'll just leave it like that for now. Okay, so the focus of this gathering, everyone, is really to hone in on the last assessment. I've just about finished marking your digital scholarship essays. They've been moderated this week. Moderation is done. I just need to tidy up a few things and then I'll send them back to you. So hopefully before the weekend. If not, it will be over the weekend. Okay, so you'll be relieved about that. Now, this research project, I can't remember whether I've shown you some of these slides before or not. I forgot to check actually. So I'm going to go through these first ones just as a reminder of what we're doing. Okay, it is a research project. All right, so you do have to have your own research plan. I know you've thought about this already, but just in case you're sort of starting to move into areas where you're thinking, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing with this assessment. This is what you should be doing. Your own research plan. We have a Google Doc that has documented your focus. Now, that may have shifted slightly, and that's fine. If your focus has shifted slightly, as long as it hasn't completely changed, that's all right. We do have a collaborative peer review process that started with the Google Doc, where people were able to comment on other people's ideas, offer support, offer ideas, offer encouragement, etc. That's now been moved to the voice thread, which I want to talk about in a minute as well. So we're going to spend the next month, and we do have about a month, just less than a month, to finish this off, using the voice thread as part of that peer review process as well. And also consultative with me. You know, you can. We've been through that one-on-one consultation as needed, and that continues as well. I wonder if you could put your microphones onto mute. There's a little bit of background noise coming through. That's great, thank you. Now, as well as being, you know, a research process, it's also a critical reflective process. And this is Japanese. I don't know if any of you speak Japanese. I certainly don't. But there's a Japanese term called kaizen. And I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, kaizen. And that means change for the good, all right? So the idea, or one idea of doing research is that you want to find out what is happening so that you can actually make recommendations for change. Change that is, in your opinion, based on your research, so not just opinion, but based on your research, is change for the good, okay? This also relates to the critical reflection that we ask you to write, as well as submit your research assessment, assignment, but write this final blog post, critical reflection, so that you can reflect on the change that you've been through, or the changes that you've seen, or how you've changed in a positive way. Okay, so there's two sides to this. This is why I wanted to mention it. So don't forget that critical reflective blog post is part of the final assessment. It's about 600 words, and it really can encompass this subject, the whole degree, whatever you think you can fit into 600 words, but focus on, you know, that change for good. All right, just some words. This is one of the references actually in Module 3, Leedy and Ormrod. which some of you actually, a couple of you, was it one or a couple of you mentioned in your digital scholarship essay, I think. So research is not merely gathering information or gathering hard to find information or merely transporting facts from one location to another. It's not just all of that. It's not just those distinct things. All right. So what it is, and I'll read this out because this is from Leedy and Ormrod. Research is a systematic process of collecting, analysing and interpreting information, what we call data or data, depending which side of the fence you're born on, in order to increase our understanding of a phenomenon about which we are interested or concerned. So if we read that backwards, the point of research is that you find something you're interested in, and we can call this a phenomenon. That's a common word in research. So, for example, I was interested in online global collaboration for learning. So that was the phenomenon that I researched in the last few years. So you find something that you're interested in and you want to understand it better. And to do that, you have to collect information about it. You have to collect data. And once you've collected it, you need to interpret it and analyse it. Okay, so that's what you're going through or should be going through at the moment. Now, also to remind you, research originates with a question or problem. Now, sometimes you come to your question a little bit further down the track. Some of you may not really have crystallised your question yet. I notice that the people who've sent through slides for that voice thread so far, some have questions on, some don't. And that's fine. And sometimes you might have a question that you change in the last week. You might think, this is actually a better question now that I've really gone through the process. And that's okay as well. There are no hard and fast rules about this. So don't think that you're doing it the wrong way around. There are different ways to approach this, and nothing's necessarily wrong. It would be good if everyone did have a question that they could discuss in their final report in terms of having addressed the research question or problem. So think about that. Clear articulation of a goal. So, there's a question and then the goal is to, find out what's going on here, basically, and articulate that around the context. Specific plan for proceeding. Now, you probably should write something about this in your report, what your plan was in terms of your plan to collect data, your plan to find the data, then collect it, and how you're going to analyse it. That really should be in your report. Research rests on critical assumptions. So perhaps you are making some assumptions about how you're collecting the data, what the data may consist of, etc. Whether you write about that or whether you just think about it is up to you. And of course, research requires the collection and interpretation of data in an attempt to solve the problem that initiated the research. And that's just saying what we've already said in a slightly different way. All right, so if you haven't collected data and if you haven't interpreted it, then it likely is not research. It's likely not research that's going to address excuse me, the criteria for this assessment. And you'll notice the words in an attempt to solve the problem. All right? You may not solve the problem. You identify a problem, you may not find a solution. Sorry, Lorraine, I just saw your note there. A research goal would be a goal based on the problem, okay, or the question. So, as I said, my research was about online global collaboration. A goal of mine was to find out firsthand from educators who were practicing online global collaboration what they were actually doing. So I think that's an example of one goal in order to try and solve the problem. And the problem was we didn't really know how they were going about it. Okay, so you've already been through this process. I'm going to skip over this. I'll send you out all these slides as well, so you'll have these with the meeting recording. So you've decided what you wanted to research. Your research question, if you're still crafting it, this may help you. This approach using 4 features. So the research question proposes a set of relationships between or among concepts. It can show an understanding of these relationships and helps to explain something important about the area of interest, permits a range of possible answers, and if properly answered, advances the state of play in one or more conversations around the topic. So that's very wordy. In fact, look, I probably got that from somewhere, and I should have put where I got it from, probably one of the research books, probably one of our references in Module 3. All right, but that's there for your reference. And think about your research question. Is it in line with these features? Now, in terms of relationships, that just going back to that other slide, proposes a set of relationships between or among concepts. So in terms of relationships, so for example, you want to research professional learning in grade 3 curriculum. All right, professional learning, grade 3 curriculum. What is it about this topic, and what is the relationship with what you want to know? Okay, so that would be something that you would be thinking about. What is it about professional learning in grade 3 curriculum? What's the relationship? So for me, with my research, online global collaboration and pedagogical change, I was looking at the relationship between the practice of online global collaboration and whether it what was the relationship with pedagogical change? Was there pedagogical change? Did it require pedagogical change to be able to collaborate online globally? Okay, so there's sort of and that was a constant struggle. That relationship was a constant struggle for 6 years. So you don't have that long. You've got 4 weeks left. Okay, so you don't have to go, don't worry about going too deep into this, but this is something that will help you build a better research project and be able to discuss it more thoroughly in your final write-up. So you need to frame your research interest and move it to a research question. So which I think most of you have done already. So here's an example from last year's class, actually, and you might have looked through the voice threads from last year. I gave you 3 years in a row of voice threads, actually. There's some interesting stuff there. But one of the students last year, the research area was health professional educators. And the context was higher education and the use of digital tools for collaboration in the cloud. So the student came up with this question: in what ways are health professional educators using digital collaborative tools to work in the cloud and practice in virtual multi-campus teams and in communities of practice? And what can be learnt to facilitate virtual work? So that's sort of a sub-question. All right, so that's quite a wordy question, which often research questions are. But I think that one that hangs together quite well and does show that relationship between the research area and the context. Okay, so you're working on you've got your question, your goal, your context. Then you should have. Hi, Angela. Good to see you. Or not. Sorry, I can't see you at the moment, but it's good to see. Thanks for putting that note in the chat. All right, so I'm just sort of blurbing away here, and then we'll throw the floor open for comments and questions. But a major component, which I'm hoping you've sort of done already because you've had a few weeks now to think about this, is finding what research is out there already. And it's really important that you do this. Now, it's typically called a literature review. You have very few words and very little time to do a thorough literature review, but you need to do some sort of literature review, okay? You need to find out what's out there. Get some key peer-reviewed articles, some key references, and they must be peer-reviewed. Most of them must be. You might have some government documents. You might have some blog posts from key thought leaders, but you do need to base your research on what research has already been done to an extent. Okay, so you need to analyse this literature for topic and research focus and research question. Okay, so there's no point forging ahead with, for example, that health professional educators and digital tools for collaboration in the cloud if 10 other people have already just done it in the last 2 years. Well, you can forge ahead, but you've got to find your own angle. If 10 people have already done the same or similar angles, you've got to find a different one, okay? Now, it's not so crucial for your assessment. If you were moving into further study, it would be quite crucial. But you need to read the literature and synthesize that into a short section in your report. Just a reminder, this is just repeating once again, in terms of defining the research, what would you like to know that you don't know already? What interests you? Okay, so what is your research frame or hook? This is just a constant reminder that you should aim at finding out something new that you don't know already. Now, the Capstone Research Project design. Now, you do need to talk about this, about the design. Of course, this was in Module 3, 3.2, was it? 3.1 and 2. You need to say something intelligent about qualitative or quantitative, or the fact that you know a little bit about this and you've decided that your research is going to be qualitative, or it's going to be based on a case study, or it's going to be mixed methods. Be very careful about what you say here. Make sure you reference the literature. Right. Now, the literature can be contradictory around research design, but once again, it's a time and motion thing. If you've got a couple of pieces of literature that say pretty much the same thing about qualitative, use those and say, well, look, this is what I'm basing my design on. Be careful about mixed methods. I think I did mention this before, I'll say it again. Just if you're collecting numbers, and then you're also doing like a document analysis. I'm not going to say an interview because we're not doing interviews, but a document analysis or review of your own work in a more qualitative way, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's mixed methods. Right? If you're going to say that your research is mixed methods, I want to see some strong literature behind that, because qualitative research can also include counting things, and quantitative research can also include qualitative descriptions. Okay. Lorraine, just saw your note there. Yes, I would put the literature as a subheading. Yep. And you're going to have to be succinct. Once again, the word limit doesn't allow you to go into... and I'm sorry, but my literature review was 20,000 words until I was told I had to cut it back a little bit, just a little bit. But you don't have that sort of words. But you do have to say something about it. Yeah, I've got word count coming up. What's on the assessment doc, Lorraine, let me get to that slide and I'll explain what I'm talking about here, okay? But you do need to talk about the literature, and you do need to talk about your approach to the research design. Thank you. So the research design, basically we're looking at 4 sentences here. What data will be collected? Where will it be collected from? How will it be collected? How will it be analysed? Okay? You can do that in 4 sentences, maybe even 2 sentences. Right? But I really want to see that in your report. It's got to be clear, because you can't start talking about, oh, and this is what I found, etc., if I don't understand where you've got it from, how you got it, etc. All right. Now, what data do you need to answer your question, and how will you collect it? So we've talked about this already. I know you've moved ahead with this. Just as a reminder, things like if you're looking at professional development, or if you're looking at change management in the school, you need to look perhaps at school, the online portals, your school websites, blogs. If your principal, if your head of school writes a blog, that's a source of data. You're not interviewing him, right? So you're not one-on-one, but you can read his blog, or you can read the blog of the IT director, or the wiki or something. Of course, peer-reviewed articles, or articles, websites in general, other institution documentation like policies, procedures, organisational documentation like library association documentations, policies, etc. And then, of course, there's this autoethnography. A couple of you, I think, are doing autoethnographic approaches, which you'll need to describe what that is. You need to define. If you say, right, I'm doing autoethnography, and then don't define it, I'm going to think it's a little odd, because it needs a definition. Same as if you say, well, this is a qualitative research design, and then you don't define qualitative research, that's odd as well. Any questions at this point? All good? Okay. Fiona says, so do we need a framework with which to analyse the information found? A framework. Well, Fiona, speak to me. What have you found something that you could hang it on?
Oh, no, I was just thinking, you said earlier that you wanted a systematic approach to analysing all the data that we collected. So I was just trying to think how I could.
Yeah, now I don't know whether you started to read anything about data analysis. I think, is the Saldana text in the, I'll put this in, Saldana. I think that Module 3 reference list should have Saldana. If you wanted to dip into that, I would recommend it. In terms of analysing using keywords or key phrases, or just going a little bit deeper. But no, you don't necessarily have to have a framework. It would be good if you read, you should have read or should read very soon something about data analysis in terms of the different approaches to data analysis, how you choose those keywords and phrases in the literature, how you interpret perhaps the writing on a school website or someone's blog, how you interpret policy writing through tone, through even sentence structure, etc. So think about that. That's something I could think about and perhaps get back to you on as well. Let me think about that one. Yeah, might be something more constructive I can give you with a bit more thought. All right, now with this project you have 3 options, and you all pretty much made it clear which option you were choosing when we went through that process of deciding on a research area. It's not too late to change your mind. That's fine. If you say, oh, gee, I wish I'd really chosen the media project, that's fine, okay, if you want to change. But it might be a good idea if you sent me an email just so we could talk through it a bit. So, as you know, it's the first year that we've run it in this way. and there are some questions about the way we've set it up. So I just wanted to try and clarify some of that tonight as best I can. And with the proviso that some of this is a little grey, to be honest, okay? Because I think we're still working through it. So you're the guinea pigs to an extent, okay? So things like word count are not hard and fast for this assessment, all right? Please don't write 10,000 words, though, because that's going to take me a long time to read. But, you know, if you go to 3.5 or 4, I'm not going to take marks off. I'm not going to stop reading, okay? It's all, you know, depends which option you've chosen and what's going on with your research. So a little bit more about analysis then, in terms of perhaps not so much a framework, but what I want to see is that you've discussed the issues raised. Now, depending on your context, you know, you will find that there are some enablers, some barriers, some advantages, some disadvantages, some pros and cons, etc., depending on what you found from your research of the academic literature. Now, when I say academic literature, I mean that as well as the data that you collect. And then, of course, you need to have a conclusion and recommendations. And I've put some more information in module 3.4 there. Leanne says, the approach to data analysis is blurry for me too. I've read about it as I'm doing a descriptive case study. It's a bit confusing as to how to analyse that. I'm researching really on how to demonstrate my analysis. Leanne, do you want to say a little bit more about what your descriptive case study is?
Yes, hi. So I'm looking at how to go from constructivism to connectivism within the context of health education.
Yep.
So, you know, I'm reading a lot about best practice, you know, and how to do that, but I'm just not sure, you know, I'm reading a lot of text, so not a lot of data. So how do I demonstrate that I've analysed the information when it's text-based, not data-based? So I'm just not sure how to demonstrate it or display it, you know. I've got a loose table that I've put together, but I just don't think it's cutting it, you know.
Sure. Well, okay, so there's a couple of things here. So you're really interpreting the literature.
Yeah.
More so than gathering your own unique data, okay, which is really now where this assessment has moved to, given the ethics problem that we've had. So you mentioned table look. So I think anything that you can extrapolate, there's a good word, from the literature that shows that you've cross-referenced it, critically analysed it, designed a table, designed a flow chart, created little graphics or created little images or something that help others to interpret it or see it from your point of view. Okay? So you might talk about the fact that you've decided to represent moving from constructivism to connectivism graphically. Like, you might be good at drawing, or you may not, or you may be good at creating I don't know, you might have someone in the family who's good at drawing. You can just talk them through it and they can do the images for you. So you might say, well, I've analysed it from a visual interpretation, you know, visually interpreted it, something like that. Does that make sense?
That gives me some ideas. Yeah.
So really, you're the conduit. And this applies to all of you. You're the conduit between what you're reading, what you've gathered, and someone who's going to be reading it and trying to work out what it is you're saying. Okay, so as part of that interpretation, how you present that analysis, how you present, how you're critically not just evaluation, but analysis in terms of well, this is what I've found, and this is now what I recommend, right? In other words, I recommend that to move from constructivist to connectivist, these are the steps, these are the 3 things, this is the Venn diagram, or this is the the acronym. Come up with an acronym that has 4 words or something. You can do this. All right. It might be the next best thing. You could write a book about it. Seriously. I recommend.
A bit ambitious, but yeah, I get that. That's great.
Okay.
Passing this unit will be a start.
Okay.
But yeah, that gives me ideas. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. Fiona says the framework. No, Lorraine. It says it seems to be a confusion for me because of our limitations assessment, different to how past students have been able to conduct this research. Well, the only limitation is, Lorraine, that you cannot interview or survey. All right. You still have heaps of literature really to read, and all the other data sources that we talked about. So, okay, so I'm getting to metrics in a minute. Fiona says the framework I was reading about was the Tosca framework. State the problem. Who owns the problem? What are the success criteria? What are the constraints? What are the assumptions? Well, that's fine. That's fine. Let's see if we can find some other frameworks. I'll look up frameworks for you. See what. I just can't think of anything that I've particularly worked with at the moment. Though I probably have, I just can't think of it. Okay, all right, let's keep moving. Now, so this is the report. Now, before you say, well, I'm not writing a report, well, everyone has to write a report. Yeah, I'm coming to metrics, don't panic. In your report, write about or provide an outline of the nature of your research. Now, this is directly related to the criteria, okay? Now, like it or not, I have to assess you based on the rubric. Now, I'm not saying it's the best rubric. I'm not saying it's the most ideal rubric. We did review the rubric in terms of the changes to the assessment. I'm not quite sure that we've got it right, actually, but let's see. So there's going to be a little bit of flexibility here. But essentially, I do need to see the context of the project and to show me that you're going to do an outline of the nature of your research. All right? A+ for everyone. Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks, Rachel. And that's so 10 marks, 10 out of 50, approximately 750 words, okay? Very approximate. And then I need to see the processes involved in completing your research. So that's your data collection and analysis and whatever else it says in the rubric. Once again, about 750 words. And then, of course, we've got about 1,500 words, the critical evaluation of your research, so the critical analysis and evaluation. So that's the talking about the data and coming up with those diagrams and tables or whatever else. And that also will include your conclusion and recommendations. Then an appendix of support material, this is for options 1 and 2, or a copy of the paper, option 3. And this is where you need to show your writing and academic conventions. So Lorraine says, so 3 and 4 would be the only place you would see research elements. So by research elements, you mean the actual data. Well, all of it is academic writing, Lorraine. All of it has to be written in an academic way, okay? But if you mean the data and analysis of the data and this is what I found, this is what I think. Lorraine, do you want to talk to me?
Yeah, I'll talk to you, yeah. So 1 and 2 remind me of a format of how we did the project proposal that got approved. So I didn't use any research elements in the project proposal. So the outline of the nature of your research, the context and the processes involved with a structured approach, yep, so in a table perhaps. I can't see really that there are any research elements in there. I can, of course, see in number 3 I can see, I don't know if appendix is the same as a literature review or...
No, I would, the literature should really go in number one.
Number one.
Context of the project. The literature provides the context. You will talk about your research question, your goal, and the supporting literature. Okay? So, and that wasn't in the proposal.
So you're saying that the bulk of the research would go into the outline?
No, the context, the context of the project. So the context is, this is the phenomenon, or this is the area I want to find out more about. So in my example, online global collaboration.
Yeah.
And this is what I've read about it so far, very succinctly, of course.
Yes.
To provide the background and the context, and this is what people have said about it. This is what has been happening, and then you're going to talk about. And number two leads you into, well, okay, so I'm going to go on this research journey. This is the sort of data I'm going to collect to help answer my research question and meet the goal. Answer the goal or whatever. And this is how I'm going to work with the data, analyse the data. Okay, and whatever else is needed. I think I should have the rubric in front of me. Does that make sense?
Sort of. So the critical evaluation, let me move that, critical analysis and evaluation.
That is you now talking about your data. All right. So I've found all of this data. Okay.
It's not really data. It's, sorry.
Well, it should be data.
Well, it's kind of, who said that before about being text-based rather than data-based?
Well, data can be anything. Data can be text, it can be audio, it can be video.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's information. Okay, think of data as information. It's information that you've collected.
Yeah.
That is helping you not necessarily solve the problem, but understand the problem and be able to share your understanding of that problem with the reader of your report or the person who views your video as well, of course.
So isn't the critical evaluation talking about whether the data that's been uncovered has been able to answer the research question or not? And if there are any gaps?
Yes. Yes.
That's what the critical evaluation is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then...
And also it moves it towards your recommendations and including statement as well.
And where did you see the literature review coming in?
I see that coming in as part of the context. Now, look, literature can also come into the critical evaluation, all right? It's actually, it probably should come in there as well to support what you're saying, because particularly as a lot of your data will probably be the literature or literature-based, not necessarily yours, Lorraine, but other people will probably have more literature-based data. So
is the literature review, though, descriptive
of
literature?
It's descriptive, it's also supportive of what you've found, or supportive of your analysis. Okay, so for example, that the problem that we talked about before, going from constructivism to connectivism.
Yeah.
So really there should be some background material on what constructivism is, who are the key thought leaders, what's connectivism, who are the key thought leaders. Then somehow, who was it, Leanne, wasn't it? It needs to determine from all of that how people are going to move from one to the other. Or maybe they won't. Maybe Leanne will actually find something different once she's read all of the information. Maybe her initial thought about moving from one to the other doesn't actually work, and she'll come up with this really great diagram that shows everything merged. I don't know, Leanne. We'll have to see.
Just keep talking, Julie. Keep talking. Tell me more.
Because sometimes you don't always find what you think you're going to find. And this is the other thing about research, and I don't want to confuse you, but I was told for 6 years, nearly 6 years by my supervisors actually, don't go into research with such preconceptions that you're not flexible, because in fact the worst thing you can do is to go into research thinking, well, I know the answers already, because you don't. And the answers can only be derived from the data that you painstakingly collect. Okay, now once again, I know it's not surveys, I know it's not interviews, it's not one-on-one, but that's where your answers lie. Now, Greta, can you still hear me, Greta?
Hi, yes, now I can again.
Okay.
You were gone there for, I don't know what, but you were gone there for a bit.
Okay. Now, you've said...
Yep.
Yes, sorry, I'm just reading your question. Will the support material then be hyperlinks to the data I gathered for my autoethnographic study? Yes, if you're doing autoethnography, you will need to do some background reading on what autoethnography is, of course. Right, that's your literature, that's your, who's doing it, what does it mean, some history, some, what's the purpose of it, what's the point of it. Mm-hmm. And then, yes, you will be linking, you'll be talking about your work basically, okay, which is quite a different sort of...
What I wonder if Lorraine and I have a similar problem in just understanding the concept of this project. I understand the first point about the outline and the context. I understand about describing the process, but then it seems almost to me as if I missed something there in between 2 and 3, which is the actual research that I did. That's what I would think in normal research report. I would now describe what I did and what I found, and then I would in number 3 have this critical evaluation. Am I right?
Yes, actually you're right, Greta. There's actually a piece missing there. You should actually describe what you found, the findings, which you then analyse. So,
yes,
because this is so encapsulated, because it's so small, I guess I've sort of inadvertently assumed that was all rolled up into the analysis. But you're absolutely right. You need to actually state what you found, okay? Which then moves into the analysis, and it can all be sort of rolled into one, because it's 1,000 to 1,500 words, including recommendation. Okay. So
okay.
yes.
Then that makes it clear. I just didn't quite get my head around that, but then that's fine. And then in the appendix, once again, in terms of this autoethnographical analysis I'm doing, that will be then links to the documents where I talked about in my case now, my online behavior, where I analyzed it for a week in detail, where I blogged about it for a month, and where I did a narrative of how I think it changed through time.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Look, in this assessment, I would put anything that doesn't fit into roughly 3,000 words into an appendix. Okay. So whatever you think supports your thesis, short thesis, put it into the appendix. Okay. All right, but don't put something into the appendix that you haven't talked about in the main body of the report. Okay.
Yes.
Because the appendix really is like, it has to be mentioned in the report. Like I analysed 10 blog posts and they're in the appendix, or the URLs are in the appendix. Don't bother putting all the URLs in the report, okay? Something like that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Can I just ask, is anybody but me doing an autoethnographical analysis? Because I'd really like to just touch base with somebody. Anybody else?
You have to go back to that document. I thought there was another one, but maybe you are the only one.
Okay. I will have another look.
Yeah.
Ben. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right, let me keep moving here. Now, the word metrics is in the rubric. And I'm not completely happy that it's in the rubric, actually, because I think this is actually confusing people. And I've had to think about this. Now, Lorraine asked me a few days ago to think about this. Thanks, Lorraine. So this is what I've come up with to try and explain it to you. So in the rubric, it says, this is under the structured approach criterion, it states that a variety of metrics have been identified, justified, and appropriately used. Now, I want you to consider that metrics refers to how you will measure performance or outcomes of the research. How you will measure. Now, doesn't mean you have to, doesn't mean you have to have numbers in your head, okay? You don't have to say, well, this is small, this is big, this is 10, this is 5. It can be measured in qualitative, descriptive ways as well, okay? You just need to think about how you might do that. So the data you collect must ensure some measurement is possible. The analysis of your data must align with your plans for measurement, and remember your research may be quantitative and or qualitative. So I thought the best way I could further explain this is to show my example once again. So my research question, my main research question was, how might online global collaboration influence educators' pedagogical approaches? And the metrics that I used included gathering educator experiences, and I don't like the word measure, but compared them. Okay, so who had similar experiences? Who had this? Who did, what was their background? What was the school context? And so if you can, if you need to think of it in qualitative terms, if the word metrics was bothering you in terms of, well, how can we put numbers on this? You don't need to. I also talked or found out, mine was interview based, of course, educator beliefs. And I also, interviewed educators and researched on personal pedagogies. So I came up with ways of classifying these. I guess classify is one word, or putting them into different buckets, so to speak. So if you can talk about that a little bit, that will cover that criterion, okay? Lorraine says, I can see how identified and justified makes sense, but we are not using it. Identified and justified. Well, that's what I'm just saying. It would be good if you could identify and justify your use of metrics. Okay? That's the point. Rachel says, how can we do any measurement of its success if we aren't able to survey a question? Would it all be our own opinion? Well, yes, because it's a considered opinion. Okay, for the next month, you are the absolute expert on your corner of the research market, right? So you've read the research, you've collected the data, all right? You've worked out which buckets to put it in, and you might have a lot in this bucket and not so much in this bucket. Educators might believe in constructivist learning, therefore they're global collaborators, whereas the educators who don't believe in constructive learning aren't such good global collaborators, okay? So things like that, and more of them are over here and less are over there. Okay, Greta says, is this what you called, code book or game book? Now, Greta, you asked me that on the Padlet, didn't you? Did I answer that question? The code playbook, I actually called it. The word was, I'll put it in here, playbook. And you can look up the meaning of playbook. The way that I analyse my data, this is getting a little bit deep. I don't want you to get too bothered about this, but just out of interest, the way I analyse my data, I came up with a playbook, and it was a playbook of key, and I put it as a flow chart. and it was keywords and themes. All right. And I just wonder whether it would be useful for me to show you that. Let me think about that for a minute. It may not be. So that may be something, you know, as you think about how am I going to put things into buckets, a flow chart or a list of keywords might be useful, or set, you know, categories. Does it have to be already done? Could a measurement be YouTube views? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Which we may not know at the time of submission. So it might be part of your recommendation that in the future, something with the most views. Lorraine says appropriately used isn't relevant here. Appropriately? Yeah, it is, yeah. So identified, so this is the measurement this is the metric I'm using. I'm going to examine educator experiences. I'm justifying this because the experience in the classroom is relevant to how they do online global collaboration, and the experience is appropriate. I'm going to use it appropriate. So it's appropriate because it is educator practices related to experience, something like that. I think I did great. Oh, I see. Rachel, okay. So hang on, Rachel, you might need to talk to me about this. Put your microphone on. I'm getting confused here.
I don't know, maybe, like, I apologise in advance. I've got a toddler not sleeping and one in the oven making me feel very ill.
Oh, no.
Hopefully I haven't missed it, but if the metric is measuring our performance in terms of the research, that's very subjective. And then I find that that's different to my understanding of the data you collect must ensure some measurement is possible. Yeah, I guess I'm still a bit confused about that. So I was thinking, well, you know, I would measure success. I would prefer to do it objectively rather than just my own opinion. But that's why I was thinking, well, if we posted a video to YouTube, likes would be a measurement of success. You know, if you did a journal article and that was actually picked up by a journal, I would think that that would be a measurement of success. But some of those things you might not know when you actually submit your assignment.
Okay, so it's not measuring your success. What's your topic again? Remind me.
I'm looking at how I can't even think of exactly the right question, but looking at how the programming requirements, which is so onerous for primary school teachers, limit, you know, deep learning and, you know, exciting pedagogy.
Yes. Okay. So now it's not really measuring. When you say measuring your success, do you mean your success in this assignment or?
Yes, well, that's what I thought you were
Yes.
saying in terms of.
No, it's the. Yeah, no, that's not right. So this first bit, metrics refers to how you will measure performance or outcomes of the research. So it's the performance of the data, really. So it's the how are you going to categorize, classify, put into buckets, whatever the data, not how you're going to measure your success. Okay, so if you've got data around the program requirements in your school that you're analysing, how are you going to measure whether it's so? Is this a suitable? So basically, you're trying to find out whether the program supports best curriculum objectives or supports the
best pedagogy.
Best pedagogy. Okay. So you have to work out, well, what are the measurements of best pedagogy? What does best pedagogy look like? What do good programs look like? What do other programs look like? What does this program look like? is it therefore achieving what you consider good pedagogy is? Okay, so what are the measurements here? Right. So are the measurements that...
Because I'm specifically, sorry everyone, it's a specific question for me, but...
That's all right, everyone learns.
I hope so. I'm looking particularly at, more future-focused pedagogies. And so in my, research plan, I put, about fleshing out those terms. So in defining that would be a metric.
In defining future
in defining things like deep learning, future-focused pedagogies, those sorts of things.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Look, it is, absolutely. Okay, so definitions are really important. Defining and then applying that appropriately, and I know, Lorraine, you asked me once again about appropriately, to the context of the data that you're collecting.
So nowhere in there would we have to do a personal reflection on how we went.
You can do that in your final blog post, okay? Your critical reflective blog post.
Okay.
The report should be very data-based in terms of setting it up. As I said, what's your question? What's your goal? What's the background literature? What's the data you're collecting? How are you analysing it? What did you find? What now that you've found it, what's it looking like? Bit of analysis there, critical analysis. What are your recommendations? Conclusion. Okay. Now, autoethnography is a little different. So Greta has a slightly different challenge, but there should be really no comments about your measurement of your measurement in terms of how you performed or didn't perform during this whole process. Okay, that can come into your blog post.
Okay.
Right. Lorraine, you could discuss how it could be appropriately used. I think I've sort of done that. Maybe I haven't well enough yet.
Could I just say, I'm thinking, really it's theoretical, isn't it? That's the way that I'm coming up with it, because I'm not doing a case study. I'm not contextualising it in school. I'm doing research on how digital storytelling can inform or not inform effectively trauma-informed practice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's theoretical. So could I then say, I can see how identified, I can see how justified, but appropriately used, I'm not actually, if I was doing a case study or if I was doing interviews, I could see how I could use that. But because it's theoretical, am I able to just demonstrate that I know what appropriately used means by including a short piece of writing about how that could be appropriately used? And that might be something that I follow up in the future, but it might happen in the span of this assessment. So I'm demonstrating that I understand appropriately used. I can see how it would work. I can relate it back to, was it Rachel that was talking about YouTube hits and likes? I was thinking of that too, but we're not going to know that in terms of the time span of this assessment requirement. So is it enough to just demonstrate my understanding of appropriately used?
I think, yeah.
For this particular project.
So when you say appropriately used, are you talking about the use of video? Or no, you're talking about the use of digital storytelling? So
yes.
in this case, I'm talking about your data. I'm not talking about the concept of digital storytelling. I'm talking about your actual data around digital storytelling.
But that's my research that I've conducted about is digital storytelling and effective in the kind of grand plan of trauma-informed practice, you know, and
Yes,
I'll be giving
right.
examples. So
yes, so somehow we're asking you to work out how you're going to measure the data that you've collected around that. Okay, gather metrics around the data, not the outcome, not the what the outcome is. Okay,
right.
so you've obviously read a lot about digital storytelling. You know a lot about digital storytelling.
Yeah.
You create a digital story based on your research, some aspect of your research. But what are you using to determine whether you think, because you need to say whether you think and why you think digital storytelling is a good method for the purpose that you've identified.
Trauma-informed practice. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But I'm not going to know whether it's been appropriately used because the time span for this assessment is so short. And so what I'm saying is because I'm not going to know that. If I had people that were then going to use the digital story that I produced and they were going to use it in trauma-informed practice and I was going to research that and how that worked and how that comes out and whether it was effective, you know, then I can do appropriately used. But I'm thinking I just have to demonstrate my understanding of some of these terms. I mean, am I the only one thinking this? Is anyone else confused about this?
I think we're getting down in the weeds a bit here. I think we're taking
That's not
a little bit too literally, maybe.
Yeah.
So look, I'm not going to look. I don't want to get too bogged down in this. I did want to try and explain it because I knew that you were concerned about it, but I think it is a little. It's quite a difficult concept to understand or to address, given that we're not collecting our own data. Put it that way.
That's
we're
right.
not collecting our own specific data.
Yep, exactly. That's right.
And I think, to be honest with you, I think this is something we overlooked when we redid the rubric, and I think we need to change it. So look, let's not get too bogged down in the weeds on this.
Yeah.
Think about it. Give me a sentence about metrics or something that will satisfy the criteria, so I don't have to say to you you completely ignored the criteria.
Yeah.
But let's there are a lot of other things to focus on in the next few weeks. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's agree on that, I think, at this point.
Yeah. That sounds good. Thanks, Julie.
Okie doke. Angela says, is it like putting collected data against a gold standard? Yeah, sort of like that, Angela, maybe. Yeah. Okay. I've got just a couple more things here. We're over time, but let's keep moving. I've said that bit about my research. Oh, the blog post. This is the blog post, critical reflection on how your views, knowledge and understanding of the work of an education professional, et cetera, et cetera. This is all in the subject outline. So look, you're 600 words, you're open to write anything that's critical and evaluative, all right, and reflective. That's fine. Now, the Flipgrid. Sam, are you still with us? Sam was the first one to record on the Flipgrid. So he's in. I'm hoping everyone else can get in. And please send me an image this week. But we're going to respond to each other. The beauty of Flip... Sorry, not Flip. No, that was the... Sorry, that was the... sorry, not Flipgrid, VoiceThread. Okay, bye, Rachel. Sorry, we've gone over time. Ignore what it says there. It's not Flipgrid. It's VoiceThread. Let me just get rid of that. There we go. Gone. When I send it out to you, it won't say Flipgrid. You each have your own slide on the VoiceThread. Speak to it, write text, do a little video, etc. and we will respond, okay, and keep that peer review process going. All right, a couple of resources that I've thrown in here. If you want to check your academic writing, I found this one really useful, Espresso app, and this academic word list. I think at this point you're trying to write it, you're going to do your best at writing an academic report. Let's just keep improving on that standard. And then some tips for success, and this is also based on what I'm reading in your digital scholarship papers as well. Don't overuse quotes. Be really careful about overusing quotes. In fact, this type of report, this last assessment, I really don't expect to see any quotes in there. Okay, you need to be totally interpretive. Unless it's a real gem, which is only one sentence, a short sentence, I would not include it at all. Make sure you include a cover page for this one. Make sure it is a research project. I'm not sure why I wrote that now. There must be something I was thinking about. Anyway, I think we've said all that the whole last hour. Check your APA 6, including in-text citations, and proofread. Okay, that's my last word to you. I know sometimes it's right up against the time that it's due in, but it's best to walk away for 24 hours and then come back and read it again. It really is. And you'll find things. You always find things. Okay, anything else? All good? All right, let me stop sharing. Who have we still got in the room? Sam's still there. You haven't fallen asleep, Sam, have you? You still there?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Seems you're the one lying on the bed, apparently.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, look, I hope I've clarified some things and not confused you too much. There's our gallery view. There we go. As I said, let's not get bogged down in the weeds. Let's just really, I want you to have some fun with this, okay? Because this should be something that you are passionate about. I know, Lorraine, you're passionate about your subject, and everyone's found something that at least they're interested in, I hope. And who knows, your report actually might end up on someone's desk, your head of school or your head librarian or your whoever that you, and it may actually be something that you use. People do use this degree for promotion and all sorts of career ambitions. So, and it's something that you can talk about. If you do go for a promotion or a new job, when I researched this and this, I found this, and I used proper research protocols and etc. So it's a great experience to go through. It may feel really frustrating at the moment, but it is a great experience to go through. Okay, let's stop. It's late. Think about all of that. I'll send out the recording first thing tomorrow morning and this PDF, and we'll take it from there, okay? And we'll focus on the communication through the voice thread as well. All good?
Great. Thanks, Julie.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.